I'm Sarah, 26F, and my fiancé is Mike, 28M. We've been together for 3 years, living together for the past year and a half. Mike proposed to me last Saturday night in the most beautiful, intimate way possible. Just the two of us at the spot where we had our first date, this little overlook by the lake in our town. It was perfect, magical, everything I'd ever dreamed of. We were both crying happy tears, and in that moment, nothing else in the world mattered except us. Here's where things get complicated. My family lives about 20 minutes away, while Mike's parents live in another state, about a 6-hour drive. My parents, my sister Emma, 24F, and my brother Jake, 22F, have been incredibly close to Mike since we started dating. They've essentially adopted him as their own son. Mike's parents, Patricia, 52F, and Robert, 55M, are lovely people, but we only see them maybe 4 times a year due to the distance. They're not bad people at all, they're actually really sweet, but the relationship is just naturally less close because of geography. After Mike proposed, we were both on cloud 9. We sat by the lake for another hour just talking about our future, our dreams, making preliminary plans. When we got back to our apartment around 10 p.m., we were still buzzing with excitement. Mike suggested we call someone to share the news, and I immediately thought of my parents. Should we drive over to tell them in person? I asked, and Mike's face just lit up. Yes. They're going to lose their minds with happiness, he said, and he was absolutely right to be excited about their reaction. So we drove to my parents' house. Mom answered the door in her pajamas, looking confused about why we were there so late, and when she saw our faces, we were practically glowing. She immediately knew something big had happened. We're engaged. I practically shouted, and all hell broke loose in the best possible way. Mom started crying and screaming. Dad came running from the living room. Emma and Jake came thundering down the stairs in their pajamas. Everyone was hugging and crying and laughing. Dad broke out the good champagne he'd been saving. Mom immediately started talking about wedding venues. Emma was examining my ring with a magnifying glass like she was a jeweler, and Jake kept clapping Mike on the back saying, "Welcome to the family, man, officially." It was honestly one of the most beautiful nights of my life. We stayed until almost 2 a.m., just talking and celebrating. My family was asking about dates, venues, guest lists, all that fun engagement stuff. Mike was right in the thick of it, contributing ideas and getting genuinely excited about planning with them. The next morning, Sunday, we woke up late and spent the day just enjoying being engaged. We went to brunch, walked around the city, called a few close friends. It was blissful. Mike mentioned calling his parents, but we were having such a perfect lazy Sunday that we decided to wait until the next day when we could really sit down and have a proper conversation with them. Monday evening, Mike called his parents while I was in the shower. When I came out, his face was completely white. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. What happened? I asked immediately. They already know, he said quietly. Emma posted photos on Facebook last night from our celebration at your parents' house. My mom saw them this morning. My heart dropped. Emma had taken some really sweet candid photos of all of us celebrating, me showing off the ring, Mike hugging my dad, all of us toasting with champagne. She'd posted them with a caption like, "My sister is engaged. Welcome to the family officially, Mike. Best future brother-in-law ever," with about 1 million heart emojis. I immediately felt sick. Emma meant well. She was just excited and proud and wanted to share the happy news, but I realized we'd made a huge mistake in the timing of everything. Mike told me his conversation with his parents had been awful. His mom had started crying on the phone, not happy tears, hurt tears. She'd said she felt completely excluded from one of the most important moments in her son's life. His dad had been quieter, but was clearly upset too. They both felt like they were afterthoughts, like Mike's real family was my family now, and they were just distant relatives who would find out about major life events through social media. I tried to explain. Mike said miserably. I told them it wasn't planned this way, that we were just so excited, and your family is so close by, and we were going to call them the next day. But Mom just kept crying and saying that 24 hours is a really long time to wait to tell your parents you're engaged. I felt terrible. I really did. But I also felt like they were being a little bit unreasonable. It had been less than 24 hours since the proposal happened. We weren't trying to exclude them or hurt them. We were just caught up in the excitement and made a spontaneous decision to share the news with my family first because they were geographically closer. But the situation got so much worse. Tuesday morning, Patricia called me directly. I was at work, and when I saw her name on my caller ID, I knew it wasn't going to be good. "Sarah," she said, and I could tell immediately she'd been crying. "I need to talk to you about what happened." I tried to be understanding. I apologized for how things had played out and explained that it wasn't intentional, that we'd been planning to call them the very next day. But Patricia wasn't having it. She told me that she felt like I had stolen this moment from them, that for years, she'd been imagining the phone call where Mike would tell her he'd gotten engaged, and instead she'd found out through Facebook like she was some acquaintance. "Do you understand how humiliating that was?" she asked. My coworker congratulated me on Mike's engagement before I even knew it had happened. She'd seen the photos on Facebook. I had to pretend I knew what she was talking about. I genuinely felt bad about that. That must have been really embarrassing and hurtful. But then she said something that really rubbed me the wrong way. "I think you two need to consider whether you're really ready for marriage if you can't even handle telling both families about your engagement in a considerate way." That felt like a low blow. Our readiness for marriage had nothing to do with the order in which we told people about our engagement. I try to stay calm and diplomatic. "Patricia, I really am sorry about how this played out. It wasn't our intention to hurt you or Robert. We were just so excited and my family happened to be nearby. If you want, we could do something special to celebrate with you guys when we see you next." But she wasn't interested in solutions. She wanted me to acknowledge that we'd been thoughtless and selfish, her exact words. The conversation ended badly, with both of us frustrated. Wednesday, things escalated even further. Robert called Mike at work, which he never does, and basically gave him a lecture about priorities and family loyalty. He told Mike that he was disappointed in how Mike was handling this transition into marriage, and that it seemed like Mike had already chosen which family was more important to him. That evening, Mike was a wreck. He kept apologizing to me, saying this was all his fault, that he should have insisted we call his parents first or at the same time as we told my family. But here's the thing. I don't think we did anything wrong. Yes, the timing was unfortunate, and yes, I feel bad that Patricia and Robert were hurt. But we're adults. We'd been engaged for literally less than 24 hours, and we made a spontaneous decision to share happy news with the family members who were closest to us geographically. We weren't trying to make a statement about who was more important. We were just caught up in the joy of the moment. Thursday brought even more drama. Patricia texted me a long message about how this whole situation had made her realize that she and Robert were going to be second-class citizens in our marriage. She said she was worried about how future milestones would be handled. Would they find out about our pregnancy through Facebook too? Would they be the last to know about grandchildren? She also brought up some specific examples that honestly felt like she was reaching. She mentioned that when we visited them for Christmas last year, we'd only stayed 3 days, but we'd spent 5 days with my family. She brought up that Mike calls my parents Mom and Dad, which they love and encouraged, but still calls them Patricia and Robert, which has literally never been an issue before. She said that all of these things together painted a picture of where their son's loyalties really lay. I was starting to feel less sympathetic and more frustrated. Yes, we spend more time with my family, but that's because they live 20 minutes away, not 6 hours. Yes, Mike is close with my parents, but that's because he sees them regularly and they've made an effort to include him in everything. Patricia and Robert are lovely, but they've never made the same effort to build that day-to-day closeness, partly because of distance and partly because that's just not their style. Mike was caught in the middle and feeling awful. He loves his parents, but he also felt like they were being unfair. He suggested we drive up to see them this weekend to talk everything out in person and maybe do a special engagement celebration with them. But when he called to suggest this, Patricia said she didn't want us to come if it was just out of guilt or obligation. She wanted us to want to include them because we genuinely cared about their feelings, not because we felt bad about the Facebook situation. Which honestly made me a little angry. We do care about their feelings. We were planning to call them 24 hours after the engagement happened. It's not like we were planning to keep it a secret for weeks or months. The only reason they found out through Facebook was because my sister got excited and posted before we had a chance to call everyone personally. Friday, Mike's older sister Kelly, 30F, called him and absolutely tore into him. Apparently, Patricia had called her crying, and Kelly was furious with both of us. She told Mike that he was being disrespectful and that he'd forgotten where he came from. She said that when she got engaged 4 years ago, she'd called their parents before telling anyone else, even though her fiancé's family lived closer. Kelly also said that she thought I was a bad influence on Mike and that I was alienating him from his real family. That really stung, because I've never done anything to discourage Mike's relationship with his parents. If anything, I'm always encouraging him to call them more often and visit when we can. The conversation with Kelly ended with her saying that she was disappointed in Mike and that she hoped he would figure out what's really important before it was too late. Yesterday, Saturday, exactly 1 week after our engagement, Patricia and Robert drove down to our city without warning. They showed up at our apartment at 10 a.m., looking grim and determined. Patricia had clearly been crying during the drive. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she looked exhausted. Robert looked stern and uncomfortable. "We need to talk," Patricia said when I opened the door. What followed was one of the most uncomfortable conversations of my life. Patricia and Robert sat on our couch while Mike and I sat across from them, and Patricia basically laid out all the ways she felt we'd hurt and excluded them. She talked about how excited she'd been about the prospect of Mike getting engaged, how she'd been planning for years what that phone call would be like, how she'd imagined crying happy tears and immediately starting to plan the wedding with us. Instead, she said, she'd been ambushed by the news on Facebook and made to feel like an outsider in her own son's life. Robert was more measured, but he was clearly hurt too. He said that he felt like they were losing their son, and that our engagement had made him realize how distant Mike had become from them over the past few years. "It's not about the Facebook post," Robert said. "That was just the final straw. It's about the pattern of us being an afterthought in your lives." Mike tried to defend us, explaining about the distance and the spontaneous nature of our decision to tell my family first, but Patricia cut him off. "It's not about distance, Mike," she said, crying again. "It's about priorities. If we were important to you, you would have found a way to include us in this moment, even if it meant waiting a day or calling us at the same time as Sarah's family." Then came the quote I started this post with. "You've made it crystal clear that we don't matter to you anymore. 25 years I've been waiting to celebrate my son's engagement, and I had to find out through a Facebook post like some stranger." It was heartbreaking to see her so upset, but I also felt like she was being dramatic. We hadn't intentionally excluded them, and finding out about happy news through Facebook isn't the end of the world. I found out about my cousin's engagement through Instagram, and I was just happy for her. But I could see how much pain Patricia was in, and I genuinely felt bad about that. Mike was torn. He apologized profusely and said he understood their feelings, but he also tried to explain our perspective. He told them how excited we'd been, how spontaneous the decision had been to tell my family, how we'd genuinely been planning to call them the very next day. Robert seemed somewhat understanding, but Patricia was inconsolable. Then she said something that really shocked me. "I think you two should consider postponing the engagement until you can figure out how to handle family relationships better." I couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Patricia," I said as gently as I could, "I understand that you're hurt, and I'm truly sorry about that. But we're not going to postpone our engagement because of a miscommunication about timing." Her face got red. "It's not a miscommunication, Sarah. It's a fundamental lack of consideration for Mike's family." Mike jumped in and supported me, saying that postponing the engagement wasn't on the table, but that we wanted to find a way to move forward and repair the relationships. Patricia then said that she and Robert needed time to think about how they wanted to be involved in our wedding planning because they didn't want to be afterthoughts in that process too. She said that if we couldn't guarantee that they would be equally included in all wedding decisions and communications, they might prefer to just attend the wedding as guests rather than being involved in the planning process. That felt like emotional manipulation to me. They were basically threatening to withdraw from our wedding unless we promised to treat them exactly the same as my parents, which isn't realistic given the geographical and relational differences. The conversation ended with Patricia and Robert leaving to drive back home, saying they needed space to process everything. Mike and I spent the rest of yesterday fighting. Not about whether we'd done anything wrong. We both agreed that we hadn't intentionally hurt anyone, but about how to handle his parents going forward. Mike feels guilty and wants to bend over backward to make them feel better, even if it means making promises about the wedding planning process that might not be realistic. I feel like we're being emotionally manipulated, and I don't want to set a precedent where we have to manage Patricia's feelings about every decision we make in our marriage. Mike accused me of not caring about his family's feelings, which really hurt. I do care. I just don't think we should have to reorganize our entire approach to family relationships because of this one incident. I pointed out that my family has never made these kinds of demands or created this kind of drama. When we make decisions, they trust that we have good intentions. They don't assume the worst or turn everything into a referendum on how much we love them. Mike said that comparison wasn't fair because my family has had more opportunities to build closeness with us, which is true, but also not our fault. We went to bed angry with each other for the first time since we got engaged, which was really sad. This morning, Mike got another call from Kelly, who'd apparently talked to their parents and was even more upset than before. She told Mike that he was choosing his girlfriend's family over his own, and that she was ashamed of how he was handling this situation. Mike came off that phone call looking defeated and exhausted. He said he felt like he was trapped between two families and couldn't make anyone happy. I feel terrible for him, but I also feel like his family is being incredibly unfair and manipulative. Yes, the timing of how they found out was unfortunate, but their reaction has been completely over the top. Now I'm wondering if I'm missing something. Am I being insensitive to their feelings? Should we have handled this differently? But I also keep coming back to the fact that we did nothing intentionally hurtful. We were engaged for less than 24 hours before they found out. We were planning to call them the very next day. The only reason they found out through Facebook was because my sister got excited and posted photos. I don't think that warrants this level of drama and emotional manipulation. But Mike is miserable, and I hate seeing him caught in the middle like this. I love him so much, and I want him to have a good relationship with his family. I just don't want to spend our entire engagement and marriage walking on eggshells around Patricia's feelings. Some additional context that might be relevant. Mike and I split our time pretty evenly between our families during holidays, considering the travel involved. We do spend more day-to-day time with my family, but that's purely geographical. Patricia has made comments before about feeling like she's losing Mike to my family. This has been an underlying tension for a while, and I think the engagement situation just brought it all to a head. Mike is naturally very close with my parents because he sees them regularly and they have a lot in common. My dad and Mike bond over sports and work projects. My mom loves cooking for him and treats him like another son. It's a really natural, organic closeness. With Patricia and Robert, the relationship is warm but more formal. They're lovely people, but they've never really made an effort to build that day-to-day closeness, partly due to distance and partly due to personality differences. Mike has never complained about this dynamic before. He loves both families, but has always seemed comfortable with the fact that he's naturally closer to mine due to proximity. I've always encouraged Mike to stay in closer touch with his parents. I remind him to call them. I suggest we visit more often, though that's limited by work schedules and travel costs, and I've never done anything to discourage their relationship. Patricia has made comments before about wanting to be more involved in our relationship milestones. When we moved in together, she was upset that we told my parents first, again because they helped us move and his parents live 6 hours away. When Mike got his promotion at work, she was upset that my parents knew before she did, because we had dinner with them that week and it came up in conversation. I'm starting to see a pattern where Patricia feels threatened by Mike's closeness with my family and interprets normal relationship dynamics as intentional slights against her. Mike loves his parents and wants to have a good relationship with them, but he's also frustrated by these repeated conflicts over things that seem minor to him. Kelly has always been protective of Patricia and tends to take her side in family conflicts. She's never been particularly warm toward me, though she's never been openly hostile before this. Robert is generally more reasonable than Patricia, but he tends to support her even when he privately disagrees because he doesn't like conflict. So, Reddit. Am I the asshole here? Should we have handled the engagement announcement differently? Are Mike's parents justified in their feelings? Or are they being manipulative and unreasonable? I genuinely want to know if I'm missing something, or if I'm being insensitive. This is supposed to be one of the happiest times in our lives, and instead it's been overshadowed by family drama and guilt. How do we move forward from here? How do we plan a wedding when Mike's parents are threatening to withdraw from the process? How do we set healthy boundaries without further damaging the relationships? I love Mike more than anything, and I want to marry him regardless of this drama. But I also don't want to spend our marriage constantly managing his mother's emotional reactions to our normal life decisions. Update. Edit added 1 hour later. I've been reading the comments and want to address a few things people have brought up. Several people have asked why we didn't just call Mike's parents the same night we told my family. Honestly, it was late, after 10 p.m., when we decided to share the news, and it would have been after midnight by the time we got back from my parent house. We thought it would be more considerate to call them the next day, when we could have a proper conversation, rather than waking them up in the middle of the night with big news. Some people are saying we should have controlled what my sister posted on social media. You're right that we should have thought about this possibility. In our excitement, it didn't occur to us to ask my family not to post about it until we'd told everyone. That was definitely an oversight on our part. A few people have said that Patricia's feelings are completely valid and that we should have prioritized telling both families equally. I understand that perspective, but I also think there's a difference between having hurt feelings and the way this situation has been handled. Being upset is understandable, but threatening to withdraw from our wedding planning and questioning our readiness for marriage feels like an overreaction. I appreciate everyone's perspectives, both critical and supportive. This is definitely a learning experience for us. Final update. Edit added 3 hours later. Mike and I just got off a long phone call with his parents. We decided to approach this differently after reading some of your comments and doing some soul-searching about how we could have handled things better. Mike started the call by taking full responsibility for not thinking through the implications of telling my family first. He apologized sincerely and acknowledged that his parents had every right to feel hurt by how things played out. I also apologized for not being more sensitive to their feelings and for not considering how the social media posts might affect them. Patricia was still emotional, but she seemed to appreciate that we were taking responsibility rather than just defending our actions. Robert was more understanding and said he knew we hadn't meant to hurt them. We asked if we could plan a special engagement celebration with them next weekend, something just for their family so they could have their own moment to celebrate with us. Patricia said she would like that, and that what hurt most was feeling like she'd missed out on that initial joy and excitement of hearing the news. She said she'd been looking forward to that moment for years, and having it taken away made her feel disconnected from one of the most important milestones in her son's life. I realized that for her, it wasn't really about being told first or second. It was about having a special moment to celebrate and feel included in our happiness. The Facebook thing just made her feel like an outsider looking in on someone else's joy. We're driving up next Saturday for an engagement party that Patricia wants to host for us. We're also going to be more mindful about including them in wedding planning decisions and making sure they don't feel like afterthoughts. I still think their initial reaction was a bit over the top, but I understand better now where they were coming from. Sometimes it's not about being right or wrong. It's about understanding what people need to feel loved and valued. Thanks for all the perspectives, Reddit. Even the harsh ones helped us think about this situation differently.